Hi, good day. This is Job Aguas, and welcome to my lectures in Philosophical Anthropology. And the topic of our discussion is man as a religious subject. I will be dividing my discussion into three parts. First, I will discuss about religion, the nature of religion, the different types of religion, the different attitudes or positions towards religion. And then the second part, I will be discussing about Zoran Kierkegaard, his idea of the religious life. And then the third and last part will be about Buber, the notion of the eternal Tao and faith. So as you can see, the required readings for this discussion, I have three required readings for my students. First is from Soren Kierkegaard. There are two. This is the second part of the book, Either or. Uh, and then the second reading is that, that section on the theological suspension of the ethical in fear and trembling. And then from Buber, we have part three of the book, I and Thou. Specifically discusses the eternal Thou. Okay? So let's just an introduction. Let's talk about religion. One of the basic elements of our life as human persons is our belief system. And no belief system had influenced our way of thinking, our way of living, system that shape our life than our religious beliefs. Okay? After all, by our own very nature, we are a religious we are religious beings. We are worshiping beings. And our practice of worshiping the divine or our relationship with the divine or with the spiritual being is embodied in our religious beliefs. In the sense, we can say that the human being, the human person, is a believing and worshiping being. He is a religious subject. So, religion indeed has an immense influence in our life and in our existence. Even today, especially today, during the time of pandemic, we can see a lot of people, more people, becoming religious or becoming spiritual. Okay? So we people are now praying. People now are reconnecting with the divine or with God. Right? However, although religion and worship are fundamental features of our existence, since we have diverse cultures, we have, and of course, diverse religious beliefs, we have different forms of worship. We worship God or the divine differently, based, of course, on our cultural background. We have different religious beliefs and different ways of expressing our religious beliefs in the way we practice our religion. And we can say that the practice and belief of religion have developed into the three main monotheistic religions, namely Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Or if you're going to present it chronologically or historically, you have Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And then, of course, the major non monotheistic religion, religions, namely Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism. If you will see, all these religions emerged or originated in the East. Okay, all these major religions they developed or emerged from the East, from Asia mainly. So in this chapter of our discussion, we will focus on religion, the nature of our religious beliefs, our relation with the spiritual or the divine, or with God. And we will also discuss the basic religious beliefs of some of the major religions. Okay? Because of these diverse religious or religions, it is important to understand and have a proper attitude towards this diversity. Because uh, if we can see in our history, many of the conflicts, human conflicts, are caused by the diverse religious beliefs. So it's very important to develop a proper attitude towards this diversity. So the third lesson, or the last lesson of part, this first part of the discussion, will be understanding the diversity of our religious beliefs. So let's focus now first on man as a worshiping subject. We often find ourselves making the sign of the cross, right? Or just being quiet and saying short prayer, or sometimes we find ourselves just kneeling inside a church or a temple or in a mosque, or just have a quiet place deep in our thoughts, just talking to him or talking to a divine being. When we have problems or difficulties, we pray, just like what we are experiencing now. When we need something, we pray. And the more we long or desire for something, the more intense is our prayer. So, prayer is the most intimate form of communicating or relating with God or with a divine being. Prayer is common everywhere. Every person prays. Of course, they pray to different beings because that's based on their belief. But everyone prays. So, but why pray? Why do we have to communicate or talk to God? From the depth of our spirit, there is a longing for relation. We talk to somebody because we want to relate with him or with her. The somebody to whom we can talk to is no ordinary person or being, right? So it's our belief that this him, this being whom we pray to, is a being who is all powerful, all knowing, and all loving, that we can ask whatever we want to ask from him. We can tell him whatever we want tell, to tell him. And we expect him, we believe that he will understand and he will grant our petitions, our prayers. So, but of course, it's not just to ask something. If we want to ask something for favor, for blessings, for graces, then we must also pay respect and homage to him. So that when we ask, he will provide us with our needs. And if we respect him, if we love him, he will also respect and love us in return. He will protect us. He will guide us. That is our belief. After all, we believe that this God is an all loving, all knowing, all powerful, and therefore deserves our adoration, our respect, our love, our worship, our devotion. Okay? So, this experience of praying, no, tells us a lot about ourselves. This experience of communicating with God, relating with God, tells us a lot about ourselves. First, it tells us that we recognize that there are things that are beyond our power, beyond our capacity, beyond our understanding. And therefore, we long for that being, that God. Okay? Because some philosophers would say, well, like Feuerbach, for example, would say, well, it's just, this God is just a pigment of our imagination. It's just a creation of the mind. But for the believer, God is somebody who is able to somehow provide for him. or for us. God complete our own deficiencies and limitations. So this basic human experience provides an existential basis of our belief in a divine being and in religion. Religion then is an expression of our relation in dependence on the divine, particularly in God. The human person is a subject of worship, and an important part of itself is his relation with God and religion. And that part of his life wherein he can relate with God. He can communicate with God. Now, if you put this experience of this relationship of man, the individual man, with God, in the social context, in the context of many people or of the bigger society, then religion becomes an institution. It's no longer just a personal thing. It is no longer just a one-on-one and interpersonal relationship with the divine. It actually becomes a social, no? A social institution, a human institution. So people don't just pray, for example, personally, they pray in a congregation. They pray in a church. And the church now instituted certain doctrines or beliefs or norms, okay, that of course would somehow guide the congregation. That's how religion becomes a human institution. Okay. Now let's go deeper into the nature of religion. From the simple act of prayer and worship emerged that collective effort to practice religion. So religion now becomes, as I've said, a bigger social context. When we consider all human institutions in the world, there is no human institution that has exercised a more profound role and has influenced our life and history as a people, as a human race, than religion. In our study of human history, we will see the pervasive influence of religion on our understanding of human affairs. When we search for an explanation about the world and how our part and place in it, and when we ask about where we came from and where we are going, what is our destination, and how we can get to that destination, religion has a ready answer. Religion answers these questions. So religious answers to our many questions. And these answers may not be as reasonable and coherent as they may be, but they still provide us with reason. And they provide us with hope, right? So there is no question that religion is very significant in our human life, in the answers that it provides to us. But still many people, or majority of people, hang on to their religious and moral beliefs. So many of our social and political mores, the norms, rituals, the practices, the standards of every human community are legitimized by religion. So religion in the source is the source also of many of our human values. It gives us reasons for living, for striving, and for committing ourselves to a higher form of existence. It gives us a sense of dignity and self worth. It gives us something to hope for, something to believe in, okay? Some sense of meaning to those things that we cannot understand, those things that are beyond our comprehension. And during times of sorrow, it gives us comfort. And when we are faced with great dangers, it gives us courage. And in the midst of our own despair, it gives us joy. Hence, from religion sprung the various feelings and emotions, sentiments, and reasons. When you look closer at religion, it is at the same time very perplexing. Because when you look at it, it could satisfy us and inspire us to do the good things. But on the other hand, it can also be terrifying. And we could also violate and disgrace people, harm people in the name of religion. So religion can make people good. It can also make people bad. While religion teaches us to love our fellow men, to respect nature, and to obey the commands of a higher being like Yahweh, Allah, or the Absolute. Oh, it can also encourage us to disrespect other people, to violate our fellow men, to kill our fellow men. So you can say that, well, because of religion, well, we aspire for higher, we aspire for happiness, we aspire for heaven, for nirvana, for paradise. It can teach us all the good values, love, respect, you know, generosity, compassion, honesty, hope, etc. It also promotes unity and harmony among its believers. Yeah, we can say religion really promises us a very noble and wonderful human existence here in this life and especially hereafter. However, if we're going to look at the horrific events in history, many of these terrible, horrifying events, the wars, the conquests, the inquisitions, the crusades, the terrorist attacks, and many other forms of violence and wickedness, many of them are done in the name of religion. So while we say that religion promotes harmony and peace, it is also the cause of persecution and domination of one group over another group. Many religions, as I've said, have become the cause of conflicts and misunderstanding. So let's move now to the common characteristics of religions. It's really difficult to come up with established definition of religion because there are just so many definitions or ideas we can give to religion. And there are many differences among religions. But despite the differences, we can probably mention or enumerate some of the common characteristics of religions. First, there's a common reference to a supernatural order, a supernatural being, through which the fundamental aspects of our life are explained and evaluated. So, religion recognizes the sacred or the supernatural realm from which a supernatural being and the supernatural forces operate. Okay? So that could be a divine being like God, Yahweh, or Allah. And from this reference to the supernatural order, there is, of course, a corresponding subjective disposition towards the supernatural order, a kind of feeling of dependence, a feeling of awe, of admiration, of love, a sense of mystery, or sometimes a sense of guilt and fear, okay, or a sense of moral obligation towards the supernatural or divine being, or God, or Yahweh, or Allah. And there is an almost explicit distinction between what this particular religion considers to be the divine, okay, the holy, as, as against the profane and the unholy. And it's common to religions to practice ritual acts revolving around the supernatural being or beings. And of course, the objects that are associated with the divine. So there are prayers, sacrifices, rites or rituals, and many other forms of corresponding to the divine being. And next, there is a system of ethics and a moral code that are believed to be sanctioned by the divine being, like a divine command. Okay? So, in every religion, you can find a particular worldview. Okay? So, for example, this is the view of monotheistic religions like Christianity. Buddhism and Hinduism would have a different worldview. So, the different worldviews are based on the kind of religion that a particular people may practice. Okay? So, then of course, from this worldview emerges is an organization of social life based on this worldview. Okay. All right. Now let's go now to the major types of religions. So I will just go through this. So there are two. You have the monotheistic religions and the non-monotheistic religions. You're very particular with this already, of course. So monotheism, there is a belief in one God, one supreme being, that this God is a personal God. And this God is omnipotent, he is omniscient, and omnibenevolent. And therefore, this personal God is worthy of worship. This God is the creator and the sustainer of the world. Okay? So he is a personal moral God, and therefore we can talk to him personally through prayers. Okay? So of course the monotheistic religions are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Okay? Of course, there are other. Uh, there's a distinction between the theists and the deists and the pantheists. Okay, I will not go into that. You can just read the handouts I'll be providing you. Okay, so let's go on to the monotheistic religions. You have the Jewish, the Christian, and the Islamic traditions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and of course, all these religions they trace their roots to a common ancestor, Abraham. Okay, Father Abraham, the Canaanite, who was chosen by God to be the father of all nations. So the Jews and the Arabs, through their ancestral background, trace their roots to uh, Abraham. The Jews from, of course, uh, Isaac, and then the Arabs from the first son of Abraham, Ishmael, and then of course Christians through their affiliation with Christ. And then, of course, you have the non-monotheistic religions. So we see this from India. In India, originated the two main non-monotheistic religions of Hinduism and Buddhism. Well, we call them non-monotheistic because uh, these religions they do not profess to one divine supreme being, but they profess to many different divine beings. Okay, uh, and then of course from China. So again, I will not be discussing. You can just read this part in my lectures, about Hinduism and about Buddhism. Um, and then, of course, from China emerged the two religions, uh, the Confucianism and Taoism. Okay, but it's a different kind of religion altogether. Now, let's go now to the last part of this introduction part, religious diversity, because we have noted that there are just so many religious beliefs, so many religions. So religious diversity is a basic fact. It's part of our existence, of our human existence. And the diversity of religious beliefs is not only limited to the diversity of major religions. Even in on the personal or community level, religious diversity is very much a common experience. In our society, there are so many religious beliefs and orientations. So diversity is not, you know, it's not just based on fundamental doctrines. it is also found in practice. Okay, and this observance is based, of course, on the different doctrines that we have. Christianity, for example, is not only diverse in terms of the two major religions, like the Catholic and the Orthodox. Both of them having different fundamental differences in their, in their doctrines. But even among Catholics or Orthodox, there is diversity in their practice. Then, of course, you consider also the Protestants. So even in Christianity, there is diversity. You have the Catholic, you have the Orthodox, and you have the Protestants. And consider the Protestants, they still have diversities. Okay, they have different. All right. So even in Islam, they divide them into two fundamental groups: the Shiites and the Sunni. And there are also many strands of Buddhism, no? The Mahayana and Theravada. So religious diversity is very much a part of our human experience. In the personal and social or community level, well, religious diversity poses certain problems. Uh, on many occasions, this religious diversity is often the cause of conflicts and misunderstanding among people and in societies. Worse, that the violence in human society is often caused by the differences in religious beliefs. So there's no way we can just ignore this diversity, especially in the present time, because the world is fast becoming heterogeneous. No, people from different religious and cultural backgrounds can come together and live in a common society, in a community. So it poses a challenge with regards to the relations of these diverse religions. And the challenge is not just to understand the diversity, and to have a proper understanding towards this religious diversity. The challenge is, more importantly, how to promote harmony, harmonious relationship among diverse religions. This ideal harmonious relations among different religious beliefs can be attained through these core elements. uh, These core elements, I consider these the core elements of promoting harmonious interreligious relationship, namely religious pluralism, religious freedom, and interreligious dialogue. So, religious pluralism is an attitude of respecting the rights of every individual to follow his conscience with regards to his belief and conviction, and to express this belief. Interreligious dialogue is an open relation, no? Meaning we can interact even if we have diverse religious beliefs based on respect and tolerance. So, uh, I will the last remaining minutes I will focus on these three. So, but just very briefly, religious pluralism is this uh, attitude of welcoming. You know, um, it's the awareness of this human interconnectedness. Yes, we are different, but we recognize and we respect these differences. So we have to construct ourselves or identities and live our lives in the world, understanding the interconnectedness of people. So, because of globalization, people and social institutions are now interacting. Before, it's impossible to see what is happening on the other side of the globe. But now, by just looking at the internet, we are able to see cultures and practices of different people from different parts of the world. All right? We can travel. Of course, that's not possible during this time of global pandemic. But when situation normalizes, we will be able to travel again. Okay. So the same could be said about religion. There may be still more religions that may still be close in itself from the influence of other religions, but we religions cannot remain indifferent and exclusive. Okay, so we have to, you know, understand this religious, this pluralism of, of religions. So when I say religious pluralism, it is a position to take given the diversity of our religious beliefs. It does not resolve, of course, this diversity because it cannot. And it does not grant privileged position on any religion, right? It does not say that only Catholics are correct and the other religions are false. Yes, there are certain irreconcilable doctrines. These are viewed from the perspective that they are or they pertain to the same ultimate reality. But central to pluralism is the view that religious traditions are connected. They overlap. There are overlapping attempts on the part of human beings, of us, to understand and you know to understand and address themselves towards the sacred. So we have to realize, we have to uh, understand that although religions are different, but we are all interconnected and we are all looking at the divine. We may have different views of the divine, but we are looking at one direction. Now, the next element of this, of promoting harmony among religions, is religious freedom. We have to respect everyone's belief, every religion's practice of their faith. So, the fact that we are open to the diversity of religions because of pluralism, we have to recognize the freedom of each individual or of each religion to express their religious beliefs and conviction, not just to express their religious beliefs, no, but to practice. So, when you say religious freedom, it is manifested in the freedom of conscience, the freedom of worship. Everyone can practice his own religion, can follow his own conscience, and can freely worship the divine whom he believes. So, a Catholic or a Protestant or even a Muslim is free to express or profess his belief according to his conscience. And this is further extended to the freedom of a church, okay? Freedom of religious association and freedom of religious expression. So when we say religious freedom, it is freedom on the one hand for individuals to profess a personal religious faith in conformity with their conviction of conscience, and freedom on the other hand of their religious communities to put their conviction into practice and make use of the means which are indispensable for that purpose. Okay? Because at the time, during the older times, we cannot have this because, well, the king or anybody who is in power can just impose himself on the belief of other people, so that the religion of the king becomes the religion of everybody. But in our present time, that is no longer possible. And then, of course, the last element is interreligious dialogue. So the attitude of pluralism and the recognition of religious freedom are not enough to address the challenge posed by religious diversities. In order to promote harmonious relations among different religions, we have to promote inter-religious dialogue. Okay? But of course, what is interreligious dialogue? According to the African Cardinal Arinze, he said that interreligious dialogue covers the various relationship with people of different religious traditions. So when such interactions are collaborative, it becomes positive and constructive. It should be aimed at better and mutual knowledge, more exact information on the other, mutual enrichment, the lessening or removal of tensions and understanding, and the promotion of common projects undertaken to make this world a better place to live in. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you gain a lesson or two from this discussion. Stay safe and God bless.